Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We are so grateful that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is W Vogel. She is here to celebrate her middle grade novel, Super Dungeon, The Forgotten King. Before we invite our guest into the studio, we want to let you know we have a brand new Reading with Your Kids certified great read, The Power of Kindness Through the Eyes of Children by Ruth Maley. This is a stunning children's picture book that aims to encourage young children to be kind and compassionate towards each other. It allows kids to see how even the smallest actions of kindness can have ripple effects which bring positivity and light to our communities. With the help of a fantasy creature named Orbit, the book offers a look at what kindness is from the perspective of young children. Ruth Maley was inspired to write this book after she asked the children in her daycare about kindness and where they felt kindness in their lives. In this beautiful follow-up to the fabulous The Power of Positivity, young children celebrate all the ways we can show kindness, both big and small, from sharing a friendly hello to helping others to treating, trading, and sharing. Kindness strengthens each and every one of us. We love the way this sweet, simple story walks us through action any child can take to spread kindness throughout their classrooms and communities. Even small acts of kindness have big impact and go a long way towards building friendships and connections. This is a perfect introduction to acts of kindness for your little ones. Please check it out today, and congratulations to Ruth Maley. The Power of Kindness is our latest Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Joining us right now from Cincinnati in Ohio, our guest is the author of some fantastic middle grade fantasy novels. She's here tonight to celebrate Super Dungeon, The Forgotten King. Please welcome to the show, W Vogel. Hey, Wendy, welcome to the Reading with Your Kids podcast.
I'm delighted to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm really excited that you're here. First, let's just address the dinosaur that's in the room. You write under W Vogel. Your name is Wendy. You told me why you write under W Vogel. Why don't you let our parents who are listening know why?
So I write as D.W. Vogel, and that was my publisher's suggestion. So it's a fairly well-known fact that girls will buy books with a man's name on the cover, but boys don't like to buy books with a woman's name on the cover. So J.K. Rowling is the prime example of that. J.K. is not her actual name, but most of the time when you go through and you're looking at especially middle grade and young adult books, when you see initials on a book that has a main character that's a male, it's usually going to be a woman writing that book. So the story of DW is kind of funny. My name is Wendy. There's no D in my name at all. But when we went to choose initials, they said, we want you to go with initials in this. And I said, that's fine. It's, whatever serves the story. And I said, my middle name is Anne, so W.A. Vogel. And they said, no, we don't like that. And I said, okay. So they said, pick something else. Give us another option. And I'm a veterinarian by trade. So I'm Dr. Wendy Vogel. So I said, how about D.W. Vogel? And they said, I love it. Let's go with that. So literally the D in W Vogel stands for Dr. Wendy.
So if you're a parent listening out there and you want your young boys to be reading authors, men and women authors, don't tell them the secret that we just let you in on, okay? Just let them pick up the books with the DWs and the initials on the author's name and let them enjoy the stories.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So tell us about Super Dungeon, The Forgotten King.
Super Dungeon was a really fun project. It is a 5-book series that's actually being added on to now. They'll be releasing several more books in the series here in the next couple of years. but it is based on a board game world. The board game is Super Dungeon Explorer, and the makers of Super Dungeon Explorer came to my publisher, Future House Publishing, and said, we have a very deep world for this board game. There's tons of lore. There's tons of backstory here. And we think that this would translate really well into novels. And the Future House said, we love this. We love the concept. We love the game. We love the characters. We love the world. Let's find some of our authors to write these novels. And so they approached me. I was in the middle at that time of working with them on my Horizon series. And they asked if I would like to write one of the books in the series. And they had just very, very basic outlines of the 5 books in the series to make sure that the overall story arc went the way they wanted it to. And they allowed us to submit for the stories that we would choose to write. And as soon as I saw the very basic storyline for The Forgotten King, I knew that that was the one that I wanted to write. So it's book 2 in the series. The books in the series, the first 4 can be read in any order, because each of the first 4 covers a separate part of the kingdom of Crystalia and one of the princesses and her entourage who is searching for a missing princess. So all of the first 4 books stand alone, and then the 5th book brings all of the heroes of those books together for the grand finale of that series. So they approached me to write the book, and I asked for and got The Forgotten King. And it was really, really fun to write in a world that was not my own. It was the first time I had done that. And so that was a really, really interesting experience to write in a world with such deep lore and to fit my writing into someone else's story. So very enjoyable and a really unique experience.
Yeah. Now, it always fascinates me. When I was a middle grade boy, I was very much into fantasy and science fiction. And as I'm approaching 100, it's not so much these days. But it was hard for me sometimes to keep things straight in these novels that I was reading, and who is this, and why is this person able to do that and have that power, and why doesn't the laws of physics work the same way over here? Did you have to, have some kind of map or a corkboard with all little index cards reminding you of the different worlds and the different things that go on in those worlds?
Certainly for this book. Because again, this isn't my world. This is a world that existed long before I ever came onto the scene. So they gave us, probably a 50-page, lore Bible of this is what is known about this world. So these are the characters, and these are the areas, and this is how magic works here, and these are the confines of the world that we're going to work in. And so everything that we did within the series had to be run through their lore master to make sure that we weren't taking liberties and creating things that couldn't exist in this world. So that's a big part of writing fantasy. So people who have never really worked in the field think, writing fantasy is really easy. You can just make up anything you want. And that's true to a certain extent. You can make up anything you want. But once you create the rules for your world, for your magic system, for your magical creatures that might live in your world, for whatever it is that you come up with, then you have to stay true to your own rules. And if magic allows characters to fly in chapter 1, then they are still going to be able to fly in chapter 10. If they can't fly in chapter 1 and you need them to fly in chapter 10, then something needs to happen in chapters 2 through 9 that's going to change that and allow them to fly. So whatever rules you come up with, that's what you have to stick to, because I can certainly tell you that science fiction and fantasy readers are very, very astute. And if you make changes that, we couldn't fly before, but now I need you to fly, so off you go, they will absolutely call you on it every time. Mm-hmm. You can't put anything past science fiction and fantasy readers, no matter the age. You create these rules and you better stick to them, because someone will notice if you don't.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I'm reflecting back long ago when I was reading those books, and absolutely remember there were a couple of times when that's not supposed to happen in this world. And that was it for me. The book, shut the book. Sorry.
Yeah, shut the book. Exactly. And you don't trust that writer anymore. And that's, yeah, absolutely. That's a big risk. And so keeping track of things I do it in a particular piece of software that is what I use when I write my books. It's really critical. It's super critical if you're writing a series, because it can be, years between the time you write the first book and the time you write the last book of the series. And if somebody's eyes change color over the course of the 5 years you're writing that series, somebody's going to notice. So keeping track of, who are these characters and what did you say that they look like and how do they speak? All of those things have to stay true in your world. Because someone will notice and someone will call you on it. And that's just absolutely the worst feeling.
Yeah, it's, it really is amazing. Why do you think, we talked about the fact that you changed your publisher changed your name to W Vogel, so that boys will pick up these books. And I'm imagining that there's a lot of girls out there who like fantasy too. But what is it, do you think, that attracts boys to these magical worlds?
I don't know that this is necessarily boys specific, but I think what attracts us all to fantasies is the escapism of it, the chance to live in a world that is not our mundane world, but also the chance to explore complicated situations in a safe environment. That's one of the things that sci-fi and fantasy do really, really well, is give you a safe space to explore complicated emotions, complicated situations, complicated world visions and new ideas, in a way that feels safe and in a way that feels secure to you. These are, maybe books now, they talk about everything. Books can talk about all kinds of complicated world issues, wars and racism and all kinds of things that people want to learn about, but they want to learn about it in a safe way. And they want to experience something in a way that is intellectually challenging, but still feels safe with them home reading on the couch. So sci-fi and fantasy have always given us that opportunity, and that's why they've always been popular and always will be popular. And I think the other a facet of that is it's fun to think, how would I do? How would I do if I were suddenly thrust into this world? If, suddenly I came into this world where there is magic and where there are, enemies and monsters. How would I do in that world? Because in our day-to-day life, there aren't monsters chasing us. There aren't dinosaurs that are chasing us and trying to eat us. We don't have a lot of tangible dangers in our lives. So thinking about how would I do in this world where I have to learn how to do magic spells because there's an evil wizard that's going to destroy us all. That's a great escape and a great chance to think about how you would respond in these situations that are so far from what we have in our ordinary mundane lives.
Yeah. Interesting that you're talking about the fact that science fiction and fantasy allows us to talk about issues that might be going on in a safe way. I immediately thought of back when I was a kid in the 60s, and Star Trek was really the first show where women were seen in positions of power and authority, and where there was a mix of races.
Yes.
Bizarre mix of races, not only white and black and Hispanic and Asian, but green and yellow and reptilian.
Sure. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it was a world where they could all be equal. Mm-hmm. And at a time when you couldn't really show that on TV as far as the modern world, but this is the future. This is a completely different world. This is a completely different situation. And so people will accept things that they might not ordinarily accept. And in that way, it becomes more acceptable. And that's how we grow as humans. So, we see that first interracial kiss on TV. Now, of course, that's nothing. But back in the day, mm-hmm. that was huge. Mm-hmm. But because it was sci-fi, it was somehow okay.
Yeah, well, it didn't really happen.
That's part of the purpose of sci-fi, to let us have these safe environments, to explore what could be, perhaps what should be, and in a way that feels a little less challenging to us.
Yeah. I think that's important to to talk about because it's just a reminder that sci-fi and fantasy isn't just mind candy.
Not at all. Not at all. It's a way to step outside yourself. Mm-hmm. It's a way to step outside your world and look at things through a different pair of eyes. It's a chance to imagine, other futures and other situations. It is escapism, certainly. It's a chance to just lose yourself in a book and just lose yourself in another world. But it's also I think the best sci-fi and fantasy also challenges some of the things that maybe are things you've never really thought about before. Mm-hmm. And I know that's always been true for me. I've always been an enormous sci-fi fantasy fan, obviously. And yeah, some of my favorite books are books that make you sit back and think about things in a new way. Yeah. And that's brilliant.
You were sharing with us that Super Dragon was originally a board game or a game.
Yes, it is a board game. It's a very popular board game series.
And this is the second series that we've celebrated here on the podcast. There's Minecraft novels that are very popular and that we've celebrated here on the show. I don't remember games being so sophisticated when I was growing up. I can't imagine anybody writing a novel about Candyland or Monopoly. And I just discovered that Monopoly was created to be anti-capitalist, not to celebrate capitalism. But that regardless, board games, it's a whole new thing, it seems like. It's more than just...
so much more. One of the other things that I do is I'm actually a board game designer and developer. So the world of board games has absolutely exploded in the past 15 to 20 years or so. And the choices now are unbelievable, and the depth of worlds that are created for these games. Board games are no longer just, sit down and roll dice and move your guy and see how you do. There's, building on the popularity of Dungeons and Dragons, there are fantasy games and sci-fi games and engine building games and so many different mechanics now in board games that it's very easy to lose yourself in not only a world of strategy, but in a whole new world of story. The place that story has now taken in board games is huge. And actually that's the most recent thing that I've been working on. We will be having a Kickstarter for a board game that I've written an 8-game campaign for. And it's called Quest Heroes of Sorcato. It'll be coming to Kickstarter at the end of this month. And it has a 90-page story. So basically a short novel that is the story that you'll follow these characters through. And that's actually quite common now in the board game world, to have real living, breathing characters that you can play or that you can play against in these board game worlds. Very interesting.
I need your help. It might be too late for me, but I know there's a parent out there that faced the same thing I did when my son was a teenager and a tweenager. He loves fantasy and he loves board games. In fact, he leads young kids through board games online. I'm not quite sure how it works, but he's kind of the game master for these kids.
Fantastic.
And it can last for weeks, and he has a blast with it. I kind of missed that with him. I didn't get it. I didn't get the board games. They were too kind of complicated for me. So while I didn't tell him he couldn't play it, I didn't get involved with him. If there's a dad out there, if there's a mom out there, an uncle, somebody out there who has a kid who's into these games, but the older person just doesn't quite get it, what can you tell that person that will help transform the way that they're looking at that experience and open up their heart and their mind so that they maybe be able to get in there with the youngster that they care about so much and really have fun exploring those games together?
That's been there have been very few good things about the pandemic, but one of the good things about the pandemic is that families have been home and families have been playing games together. The board game world has really exploded this year, and family games particularly, because of exactly that. Parents are home with their kids and they go, well, you can't play this with your friends because you can't see your friends. So I'm going to play this game with you. And that has really been a fantastic thing in the board game world. So if there is a secret, it is to find the right game. And so, if you're a family that likes story-based games, there's certainly many that I could suggest. But families with younger kids, there's a series from Plaid Hat Games called Mice and Mystics, which follows a group of mice in a world where they have been transformed from humans into mice and are trying to reverse the curse. That's a great game for families to play together, and it's an ongoing story kind of game. One of the early games that got my husband and I very much into that style of board gaming. If they want more of one-off kinds of games, there are so many different strategy kind of games. There are dice-based games and card-based games. So there are Facebook groups that are dedicated just to board gaming, and trying different games to see what works for your family is a wonderful way to bond with your kids. And story-based games where you're actually reading part of the story and then playing part of the game and then going back and reading part of the story is a great way to get kids into reading, because they're going to be following the story just the way they would with a book. But for kids that don't necessarily want to sit down and read a whole book, they can read along with the story and then play the characters, which gets them much more involved in the story itself. So another great way to introduce kids to reading and to bring reading into your home is some of these story-based games. Yeah.
Talk about being a game changer, a life changer for a reluctant reader.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. If you have a reluctant reader out there that is typical of a lot of reluctant readers, they don't want to sit down and read, but they love video games and they love being active and they have great imaginations. And as we say here in Boston, they're wicked intelligent. This could be the thing that turns their lives around and helps them develop that love of reading that we all want our kids to be able to have so that they can learn and really prosper.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as with anything with kids, it's about modeling the behavior, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't expect your kid to sit and read a book when all you do in the evening is play with your phone or, flip through Reddit or watch TV. Model the behavior that you want to see. So if you're hoping to raise readers, read yourself. If you want your kids to be readers, but you're not hugely into books, board gaming, story-based board gaming, or graphic novels or, whatever catches your kids' fancy can be a great way to bond together when you're reading or playing the same thing, and then can talk about it and enjoy it together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the key. It's that those conversations that we have and talking about the choices that a character makes in a board game could be a really comfortable way to talk about choices that kids are going to have to make in their lives. You're no longer sitting down and talking about having that talk with your kids about this scary subject or that scary subject. It's just an ongoing conversation about choices and how we make choices and how we, kind of tally up the pros and the cons and give the kids the skills so that they can go out in the world and you can sit back and be comfortable that my kid knows how to do it. They're going to make the choices that are going to keep them safe and healthy and happy.
Absolutely. And learning that there are consequences for choices. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, some of these games, there are long-term consequences for the choices that you make for your character. If you choose to take them down an evil path, then there are going to be, decisions that are not open to them anymore as an evil character. Same thing if they choose to go down, a path of goodness and light. There will be different choices available to them based on decisions they've made in the past. And isn't that what life is? Yeah. Making choices and following the branching tree of life. The difference is in games, you can go back and play again if things don't go your way.
That's what I was just going to say. We talk about how much fun young kids have reading the same book over and over and over, and how, as parents, we need to just read those stories in a different way to make it more enjoyable so that your head doesn't explode and it's more enjoyable for the kids. Same thing with the games. We can play these games with kids over and over again and play different characters, play the same character but make different choices. And what a great opportunity. What a dummy I was not taking advantage of this when my kid was younger. Oh, man.
It has really come into its own in the past I would say probably the past 10 years, the numbers of games have just absolutely exploded. The hobby is just huge now. And the choices available to parents and kids are just phenomenal. No matter what you're into, there's a game about it. And, whatever kind of strategy you like and whatever kind of world you like. If you only like space games, there's 100 space games that you can pick up. If you only want to do sword and sorcery, if you only want to play games about cats, I could probably name 20 games that are cat-based games right now. So yeah, absolutely anything that catches your fancy, there's probably a game that somebody has written about it. And, it's a wonderful way for families to be together in just a fun environment. When we have lots of game nights with our friends, and we always say that the real game happens 8 inches above the table. So we're playing the game on the table, but it's about being with our friends. Mm-hmm. And it's about the social aspect of playing games and laughing with our friends. And that's been huge for us.
This has been really eye-opening. Before we go, I just want you to be able to mention you've written other fantasy books. Just remind us of those titles, please.
Absolutely. So my series is the Horizon series. It begins with the 3 books of the Horizon Alpha part of the series: Horizon Alpha Predators of Eden, Horizon Alpha Transport 17, and Horizon Alpha Homecoming. Those 3 follow the adventures of humans who are living on a dinosaur planet. Humans leave a doomed Earth looking for a new planet to settle on. They find one, but it's a young planet. And nobody thought about what that might mean, but what it means is dinosaurs. So it follows the adventures of a 15-year-old boy who has to leave the safety of the invisible fence, the electric fence, to go out and retrieve a power core that is lost in a dinosaur-infested jungle. And then it continues with Horizon Beta, which follows one of the other Horizon ships, which finds itself on a planet that is ruled by giant insects. And the whole 5-book series comes together with Horizon Delta, and the poor Horizon Delta never even makes it to a planet at all, but it's rescued by a ship in space that maybe turns out to not be quite the rescue they hoped it wanted to be. So the Horizon series is great for middle grade readers. And then the other book that we talked about tonight is Super Dungeon, the Forgotten King, part of the Super Dungeon series, all from Future House Books.
I gotta ask, does the fantasy science fiction mind ever kind of bleed into the veterinarian mind? You haven't experimented with cat dog or anything like that, have you?
I have not, but I will certainly tell you that my medical knowledge, my knowledge of animal behavior absolutely comes across when I'm, writing books with any kind of animals in it, whether it's dinosaurs on another planet or giant bugs or dragons or living talking trees or any kind of creature that I might dream up. So yeah, absolutely. Biology is biology anywhere in the universe.
All right. Hey, Wendy, tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Super Dungeon, the Forgotten King, and all of your work, please.
All of my work is available at Wendy Vogel Books, Vogel, wendyvogelbooks.com. And you can find all the books we talked about at Future House. That is our publisher. Everything is available anywhere books are sold. So Amazon and Barnes & Noble and your local bookseller can get any of our titles. If they don't already have them on their shelves, just ask.
Yeah, and we really encourage folks, especially now, Amazon has had enough of my money, probably enough of yours throughout the pandemic.
More than enough.
So let's support our local small indie bookshops. Just make that phone call before you go down there. Do you have Super Dungeon? You don't. Can you get it? It'll be there in a couple of days.
And yes, they can. They can get any Future House titles. And yeah, have them within a couple of days, and you can go pick them up and support your local bookseller, because if we don't, then we will not have them anymore.
Absolutely. We've had a great time speaking about Super Dungeon, the Forgotten King, and a whole lot of other great stuff with our guest, W Vogel. Hey, Wendy, thanks so much for spending time with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. Delighted to be here tonight.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Ed Pacheco. He'll be here. We hope you'll be here too. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, want to start by thanking our guest, W Vogel, please be sure to check out Super Dungeon, The Forgotten King. Also want to thank my team, Alejandro Doherty, Fatima Khan, Justina Thompson, Helen Frazier. Want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking through the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.